Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new edition of our Open Innovation Thursdays. Every week, we chat with each of the authors of the chapters of the Oxford Handbook of Open Innovation, published last year in February. And we are now ready to explore chapter number 39 today. My name is Marisol Menendez, and I'm an expert in open innovation and ecosystem orchestration, but from the practitioner side. So for me, it's such a joy and really a privilege to have this opportunity to speak with so many interesting people like Richard Whittington today. Hello, Richard. How are you today?
Hi Marcel, good. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for connecting. Where are you connecting from?
Oxford, or just outside Oxford, a small village in the Cotswolds. It's a nice part of England.
Oh, wow. It's so beautiful. I've been there and it's a magical place. I'm connecting from Bilbao, and we've been connecting all over the world to chat with the authors of the book. And this is amazing. It also talks about the openness of the book in itself. Richard, we always like to begin by getting to know a little bit about the authors. What do you do? A little bit about your trajectory. Can you please introduce yourself?
Okay, well, I'm Professor of Strategic Management at the Said Business School, University of Oxford, and also a Fellow of New College in Oxford, one of the traditional colleges. It's actually, we call it New College, it's 650 years old. So um, I've been there now for approaching 28 years, and I've enjoyed my time there, clearly. I haven't left. And basically, when I was arriving at Oxford, I was beginning to develop, I just come from a period in France, developing a practice theory perspective on management. And some of what I'm going to be talking about later is based upon practice theory. Some people will know practice theorists such as Bourdieu, Pierre de Bourdieu, Foucault, de people like that. So I was quite influenced when I was in Paris by that sort of stream of practice theory. In the United Kingdom and in the Anglophone literature, probably the leading exponents of that sort of practice theory are people like Anthony Giddens, well known for what he calls structuration theory. Another person would be Shatsky, Theodore Shatsky.
Wow, so interesting. And this mix between practice and academia is what we really like, bringing academia and practice together, and moreover in these disciplines where we are building knowledge every day. So it's very interesting for us. I always also like to ask a question to our authors. How come did you wrote this chapter for this book? What's the relevance in the context of the book, or how was the process to get it there?
Well, it was opportunity and a challenge. So, from my work on strategy as practice, based upon practice theory, I'd been developing an interest in something called open strategy, which is, you can hear the echoes clearly, resonates closely with open innovation. And to a certain extent, Chesba's work was an inspiration for the work which is being done on open strategy. We're parallel but related streams of research. And so the invitation was a great opportunity for me to build that relationship with, as it were, the predecessor tradition of work on open innovation, and to think through how we did relate precisely. It wasn't entirely clear, in fact, because we'd, as I said, developed in parallel and in certain respects slightly divergently. So the challenge in this chapter was to bring the two together, open innovation and open strategy.
This is so interesting. I really love discovering that the open innovation discipline in itself is connecting continuously to different streams of knowledge. And of course, strategy is at the core of all of this. So now let's open the discussion about the chapter of the book. This is where what we came for. This chapter is part of the section 7 of the book called Open Innovation and Theory. Very interesting
Right.
because this section, even though we talked about theories in previous sections of the book, now we are evolving to different theories and the connection to it.
Mm.
And the title of the chapter 39 is A Practice Theory Perspective on Open Strategy and Innovation. You are the only author, Richard Whittington. And so, what's the chapter about?
Well, practice theory might sound like a contradiction in terms. Practitioners, the world of practice being somewhat detached from the world of academic theory. However, the great insight of people like Bourdieu or Giddens, two sociological theorists I mentioned earlier, um, is that it's really important to explain things from the actual practice of the practitioners, what they're really doing. And so we start with the practitioners and their activities and the practices they rely upon in order to carry out those activities. So, practice theory directs academic attention to what is really happening in practice and has various frameworks and constructs to help us analyze that.
She's so interesting, and I don't know. I feel that all the chapters, including in this section, are something like connecting practice and reality and academia, like you were explaining now, but also moving one step forward in knowledge areas. So very interesting. And what are the main learnings and takeouts from your chapter?
Well, the first thing is exactly that ambition, the opportunity or challenge I mentioned a moment ago, and that was to work out what the relationship now is between open strategy and open innovation. And one of the things that I discovered, in fact, kind of had to correct my own original thinking on, was that open strategy is an umbrella concept which would include open innovation, maybe open platform strategies, and other similar, what we call content strategies, what organizations do. So that would be one stream, open innovation as part of open strategy. And then what actually I think I and most of my colleagues really study is not so much open strategy in itself, but open strategizing. So what we're more interested in is the how people do strategy. So if, for instance, open innovation is seen as a content, a what issue or topic, open strategizing, which is what the open strategy community really studies, is the how of making strategy, the how of implementing strategy. So for me, the big learning in writing this article was what we'd been doing under the label open strategy was really open strategizing.
Oh,
That was the first for me, that was the first contribution. I hope it might be a contribution and helpful to the readers as well. That was a revelation for me.
so interesting. So maybe the follow-up question that pops into my mind is, can you please explain for those who don't know what is open strategy or open strategizing?
Good, thank you. So we have a figure in, or I have a figure in the diagram, which a figure in the chapter, which has, as it were, a little family tree. There's open strategy at the top. Then there's one branch which goes down to content issues, open strategies, which might include open innovation. It might include open platform strategies, for example. And then the other side is open strategizing, the how part. And what we mean by open strategizing is more transparent and more inclusive ways of doing strategy. So the how of strategizing is more transparent in that more information is released, more information is shared, both internally within the organization and externally with various stakeholders and investors and so on and so forth. So that's the transparency side. The inclusion is just as in an open innovation, and there are lots of echoes here, just as in open innovation crowdsourcing, inclusion refers to the inclusion of more stakeholders in the strategizing process itself. So the classic example are the jams, for instance, that originally IBM did, Barclays does, some large insurance companies which I've done case studies of. They do jams where they solicit ideas from all over the organization and from outside the organization using digital methods to crowdsource ideas for the strategy and to debate them and develop them. So that's the how of inclusion, including more people. We sometimes use the phrase opening doors to let people in to the strategizing process, and being more transparent. And that's opening the windows so more people can see in to what's going on. So transparent and inclusive, that's open strategizing. They can be mixed in different ways, just as open innovation has lots of different versions and mixes.
This is interesting. Maybe by doing open strategy, you are also opening core aspects of your own business, no? Because you are allowing others into your own strategy, which is a very specific and core element of the organization, no? So it requires a different set of skills and ways of thinking, no?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned skills and ways of thinking because that is very challenging for organizations. But you're precisely right to start with, and that is there's an overlap, but not a perfect overlap between open innovation and open strategizing, in the sense that you could theoretically have open innovation combined with a very top-down, exclusive approach to strategy in terms of decision making right at the top. And it's possible to imagine that open strategizing could lead to a decision to close off your innovation. So they overlap very considerably, but formally they're semi-independent at least. But to go back to the learning and the mindset and skills, that's certainly been a subject of a paper I've recently done with Violetta Splitter and David Seidel in Strategic Management Journal of an open strategy initiative in, excuse me, I should turn my phone off. Um, uh, Open strategy initiative in a large insurance company, where both the employees being included in the open strategy initiative and the top management had to learn a lot how to make this work. The top management, in their own way, made mistakes, just as the lower tiers of the organization made mistakes in communicating about strategy. So it's a skill, open strategizing, which takes a bit of time to learn, but there are techniques with which to accelerate that learning that we explore in this article. Violetta Splitter, David Seidel, myself, in the Strategic Management Journal last year.
This is so interesting and very relevant to the practitioners that follow us. And I also think it's very connected to chapter number 41, which is effectuation and open innovation, which is a way effectuation is one of the dynamics for open strategies as well. So I think that we will keep thinking about these open strategies that we are talking about. We are ready to close the session today. Maybe I wanted to ask a last question. What would be your main conclusion or the idea that you want people to take with this chapter into their minds or into their hearts?
Well, they should think more about the processes, the how. That would be one thing. And the second thing would be more about the practices. And one of the things that I underline, but our community underlines, it's very easy to mistake the practices for the praxis. So you end up with best practices. Beware of best practices. What is often most effective is in praxis, in the actual activity, being able to bend best practices to your own objectives, to be flexing those best practices, not to be following them blindly. That would be one of the themes in the chapter.
So be open about your own practices, which is
be open about your own practices and be open to deviate from them. be
Very
opportunistic, be flexible, be entrepreneurial about them.
totally. And I think this knowledge is very relevant in these complex worlds where pre-established planning is not always working and we need to be ready to adapt. Richard, it has been such a delight talking to you today. I'm very, very happy to have this opportunity to learn directly from you about your chapter. And I hope that we keep connected and we will keep digging into open strategy as an area of knowledge, very, very connected to the practice today in innovation areas. Thank you very much for reconnecting. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Marisol. That was a pleasure. That was fun. Thank you.
Thank you.